All right, man. Should we do this?
Let's do it. 3, 2, 1.
3, 2, 1.
What's the name of our podcast?
1, 2, 3. 3, 3, 3, 2, 1. Why do you count us down? We never counted down.
We don't even count it down. What we do is you just start talking, and I'm like, "Hi, this is Priya and Cam." And you're like, "No, it's Cam and Priya."
I do the intro properly.
All right, let's start this
All
episode
right.
number finale.
So episode number whatever episode it is.
Let's go back in a time machine.
Because we took a bit of a hiatus from our podcast. We were very bad. We took some us time.
We did. We took some us time.
That's what we did. The last podcast that we recorded was Qatar.
Sure. I'm going to believe you on that.
No, it was Qatar for sure.
I'm 100% sure you're right.
So that was the last podcast that we did. And yeah, to be totally honest, we're podcasting from our new home. We bought a house.
We did. A lot has changed in the last couple of months.
Yeah, and like if anyone has moved or has like just moved or like gotten a new place, you know how much work that really is. So we spent a lot, like pretty much right after I think the last podcast, we like, you know, looked for a place and like moved and everything. So just like looking around for a house and everything, and then like trying to find a place that we could get, and then you know,
moving through like housing
packing,
market prices of 2021 to 2022.
Like packing everything too.
RIP bank accounts.
You know.
Yeah.
That like took a lot.
Yeah.
A lot of time.
But anyways, lots of good things ahead for our podcast, because we are going to be moving towards a more, I'm kind of sad about this, but I'm also kind of happy because it gives us a chance to stay on top of our shit. So we're going to be moving towards an all audio podcast.
Yeah, I think we'll do
at least for the next couple of races.
Yeah, at least mostly. I think we're going to stick. We wanted to do this episode video, but we've just been like so tired and exhausted with like so many different things and still trying to get the house together, and the season is starting back up. The tricky thing was that like the season ended, and then I think we felt like we just had time to like do this podcast of these last 2 races whenever we wanted to, and then the time just like flew by, you know, and then the new season starts like pretty quick, and then there's so many different things changing as well, like in F1 and everything like that. So yeah,
it's a lot of fun though. I really enjoy I enjoy like seeing everything.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I also enjoy making sure we're staying on top of the podcast. And I feel like it's way easier and faster for us to remember all the intricacies with the race and just chill on our couch and do this from the, you know, comfort of wherever we are. But if we ever do another destination one, we'll make sure to video that one for you guys.
Be fun.
But we're looking forward to seeing your faces soon.
Yeah, so from here on out, so I think what we'll do on this podcast is we'll recap the last 2 races, which were
Saudi Arabia and Abu Dhabi, 2021.
The last 2 races of the 2021 season, and then we'll do
our next podcast will cover
the recap of the first race of the season.
Yeah. Are you going to do our intro that this is Cam and Priya with F1 My Life? Or because we're just going to skip that 5 minutes in?
Oh, yeah. No, what do you mean? We already started.
I'm Priya.
I'm Cam, and this is the F1 My Life podcast. We've already started, though.
And Milo is asleep in my lap.
Doesn't matter. So the last 2 races. So do you want to
Saudi Arabia is very interesting. I actually love all of... And I know that there's all this controversy and stuff about where people should race and things like that. But Saudi Arabia was, I think, just like lighting the match. And then Abu Dhabi was like torching an entire village with like oil and gas and everything. Like, obviously everybody has watched the last 2 races if you're here, and there's no way you could not know what happens. But I think one thing I wanted to bring up even before we talked about Saudi Arabia and Abu Dhabi is the races at the beginning of the season are always different than races at the end of the season. Like, you have more to lose. It doesn't matter what championship we're in. It doesn't matter any of that. There's always something more, like an oomph associated with like the last like half of the race or the half of the season. Would you agree with that?
What do you mean?
Like, you're driving harder. You know the car better. It's like you've done the work, you've done the testing, you kind of know what championship level you're fighting for, what driver level you're fighting for, whether you're like McLaren and Ferrari, who are fighting for third in the constructors, or you're Max and Lewis fighting for the world championship. Your caliber of driving just gets more intentional and intense.
Yeah, I mean, they do, like, the cars do develop over the course of a season. That's kind of the whole point of it. I mean, that's a goal, I guess. But given this particular season, it was ramped up even more so. Just because, like, the championship was so evenly matched. The most evenly matched, actually, that it could ever be throughout the entire year. Because going into the last race, they were like completely tied for points, right?
They were. And like, so obviously, bring us to the beginning of Saudi Arabia is that you always have on the front lines, you've got Red Bull and you have Mercedes. Really, that's kind of like the focus here in the championship. And I feel that Mercedes was obviously like a very competitive, had the upper edge on starts in 2021, like a lot of really good starts. Like Hamilton usually starts pretty well. But I mean, we were watching the replay before recording, and I always love seeing just how I call them the four musketeers in my head, like how Bottas, Hamilton, Perez, and Verstappen just start from the line. And I always find it hilarious that Perez, like, even watching it on the replay, like, almost slammed, right into Verstappen's butt. And it's almost like forgotten, like you forget about it because you were so focused on Max and Hamilton. But there were so many ways for that race start to go wrong. It's kind of alarming to me that Perez didn't actually hit his own teammate. But you kind of see like the start fine, Hamilton gets away, and this is like, I mean, I guess this is the infamous like brake check. There's always these themes associated.
So let's just get right into that, because honestly, I don't even remember how the grid was set up or whoever started where. I just remember, I think everybody, because by the time those two races came back, I don't think anyone really cared about the rest of the field to a certain extent. They only really cared about what Lewis Hamilton and Max Verstappen were doing.
All right, just set it up at the very least. So the reason that it even got into play that because Hamilton had the upper hand, and the only reason that Max was able to get so close to Hamilton is through a series of strategy, tire strategy, timing, and then of course the safety car, right? The first safety car that came out because Mick went into the wall. And so they made the decision to bring Max in and get him tires so that he could be, in competition with Hamilton in the first place. So he is kind of going around corners, had to take the long way around, and then Verstappen had to give the place back to Hamilton. I'll let you take it from there.
I can't even remember what happened next.
Basically,
they were pretty much going. I don't completely remember how the pit stop. I knew they were coming in and everything. Well, it ended up being like a red flag anyway, right? Mm-hmm. When they had to get the Haas off the track. So so I mean, they were going back and forth and battling, and you can always argue like it's an interesting thing with Verstappen, and I think this is a big reason why they need stricter rules in place for Formula One. because like there's rules, but there's no like clear rules. Like there are some clear rules, and then there are rules that like aren't as clear. Like
They're very
where and there's just like so much to go into between both of those drivers. But like yeah, like Verstappen will go into a corner, be ahead. It'll drive Lewis off the track, and then you know it's like, does he have to give that place back or not give that pace back? Like, how does it work? Like, there were a few instances where that thing happened, that particular kind of tussle, I guess, between the drivers happened, and yeah, I think the rules will definitely help that.
Yeah, I think that in this race's case, this brought up a lot of the controversy that spilled over into Abu Dhabi, and I like to use those two as an example of how inconsistent the rules are. Because I got a lot of messages after last season about how, well, there are rules and they are consistent and da 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 da. Well, obviously they're not consistent because Michael Massey no longer has a job in 2022 with
Yeah.
in the same role. So obviously there was enough people who agreed that there were human error faults in interpretation of these rules. So let's take the point where Max gained a lasting advantage by going out of the white lines and gained an advantage on Lewis. So he had to give that advantage back. That I actually agree with, because the back of his car kind of wiggled, and whether he meant to or whether he didn't mean to gain a lasting advantage, regardless, as you can't gain a lasting advantage by going off the track. That's a rule. Okay, I understand that rule. So Max had to give it back. If you compare this part specifically to Abu Dhabi, where Lewis forced Max to go wide, or there was an instance, because I know I'm going to get a lot of like whatever messages.
No,
like,
it was the other way around. Lewis went off the track.
Lewis went off the
and
track
gained
and
a
gained a lasting advantage on Max,
and there was no investigation
and there was
necessary.
not even an investigation necessary. So like what I meant when I was saying it before was like, I can't remember who pushed too wide, but I know that Lewis went off the track. He went out of the white lines, gained a lasting advantage, a very lasting advantage, and didn't have to give it back to Max. And in that case, no investigation was necessary, no 5-second penalty, which was dished out subsequently in Saudi Arabia. And literally, like, we were in this situation in Abu Dhabi where it was like the stewards forgot about Saudi Arabia. And so then in Saudi Arabia, they asked Max to give back the place.
Okay, so let's just go into this. I think first things first is like, we're going to approach this completely objectively. Like, not as, Red Bull or Mercedes or whatever team fans, like just as people watching Formula One. So, like, I understand both sides of the argument because, like, and I saw, like, I think I saw, like, an analysis of this or something. Like, what Verstappen does, and this is where I feel the rules need to be more clear. And I don't even know if they made them clear in these new sets of rules. I don't believe they did. But I feel like there needs to be clear rules when it comes to overtaking in corners. Specifically. So what happens is, like, and this is entirely like, they haven't made any rules to say this isn't like this is not a valid way to pass another car. But what Verstappen does is he races to the corner, whereas Lewis Hamilton races through it, right? So Lewis Hamilton tries to take the apex of the corner as much as he can. And what Verstappen does is when he lunges, he's not on the apex and not on necessarily the racing line, although he can sometimes make the apex. How he does this. So what he does is, like, to make the apex, the guy has to go much wider, but Verstappen just goes, like, takes a straight line to the corner. So technically, if he does that, he gets to the corner faster and he is ahead when they're in the corner. But then because he doesn't take that line, he needs to go wider when he leaves the corner. So it's kind of weird. And if you do that, you're going to force the guy on the outside off the track. So
Or collide.
Yeah, or collide. So the FIA doesn't have a rule for how to pass through a corner. So it's like, if there isn't a rule in place for that, and you say that's technically not incorrect, then he's following the rules and he's racing as he's allowed to race, right? This whole thing is all about like, if you look at it, because like Formula One is all about like using advantage, like using a slipstream. Like that's just something that exists that you can use to be faster. Like that's why guys race behind each other so they can get slipstreams, right? So if you're using an advantage that's allowed on the track, then you're using that advantage. And if it's not against the rules, then it's not against the rules.
And
right?
that's the kind of thing that I actually want to touch on, is like, that's why I think the rules need to be obviously clear, because for X amount of years, for almost 8 years, like for 7 years, Lewis has been at the forefront of racing. And so I feel like the norm is what he has done. But what Max does is not necessarily against the rules. And if it was against the rules, then someone really needs to tell him that and correct him on that with like consistency, because then he wouldn't race like that, I'm assuming, because he obviously wants to win championships. And it's like, because Lewis has been doing this for so long and been at the forefront, and really there were no other cars that were actually in competition with Mercedes, it's like the standard has defaulted to Lewis's method of racing is correct. And a lot of people have been like, oh, well, it's cleaner. This is motor racing. Like, nothing has to be clean about anything. You know, if we even get to the first race of 2022, you know, we could, you know, jump there and say that not everything happens, you know, overtakes don't always have to be clean and such. So I think my frustration, especially in like the last half of the 2021 season, is that, and we'll get to Abu Dhabi, I felt for the Mercedes team on so many different levels, because they then experienced the wrath of the stewards and FIA inconsistencies of the race.
Yeah.
So I agree with Cam, you know, like approach everything from like a third party standpoint without a bias as much as you can. I agree that Max needed to give the place back because he gained a lasting advantage off the track, and he needed to give that place back. Like, I actually, from my interpretation of the rules, like, I agree that he had to do that in Saudi Arabia. Now, this is where obviously the controversy comes in, is, you know, Hamilton kind of screamed out, like, you know, did he brake check me? And so before this even happened.
Well, just going to the whole like the gaining a lasting advantage. There's gaining a lasting advantage and then forcing a driver off the track. I feel like that needs to be cleared up as to what both of those things mean and how you qualify those two things.
And in order to qualify those two things, you need to first address what you said. Is it getting to the apex first, or is it driving through the corner? Because that's step one. Yeah. What is the correct way of passing in a corner? Because if you do it the way Max does it, yes, you may force your opponent off the track. And so it's like, if A, then B. So like, if A is okay, then B is the resultant from A.
Yeah.
If it's the way that Lewis does it, then A and then B, you know, so it all just stems from that. Like, they need to address how you can pass in corners, because the resultant of being forced wide or being forced off the track is subsequent to that. So no one's going to win the argument of which one's correct, because we haven't even established what argument A is.
I don't think they can exactly like make a rule for it, because I had the idea. I was like, what if you put a line just before the corner to say whoever is ahead when they reach that line, and imagine this would be like way before the actual apex and the turn itself. It's like whoever's ahead at this line stays ahead through the turn. You can't exactly implement a rule like that, because people make lunges and moves through corners. So it's like, if you start doing things like that, you're going to make Formula One much more just boring overall. So I don't know how you really like, and the whole thing about like racing lines is like, racing lines are kind of subjective.
Open to interpretation.
Right? So it's like, you can say whoever is on the racing line should get the priority for like going through the corner first or whatever, but it's like, even that is subject to interpretation, I suppose. So it's hard to say, right?
So that's why I'm saying, like, it's really hard to kind of interpret the subsequent results of this, because the beginning has been so has been interpreted one way and the other. We literally have two races back to back where we can say one was one and one was the other.
Yeah.
And it wasn't consistent. It's literally like, again, I don't care which team you are with. It's like there was no consistency. There was one where it was open to investigation and resulted in, giving the place back. And when the place was given back, it resulted in a 5-second penalty. Versus the other one, there was no investigation necessary. It's just inconsistent. So the whole thing I have about this whole brake check is the vernacular of dangerous driving as well is also really annoying to me.
So let's like just go into that whole scenario first. So I guess like we're kind of like that's kind of our thoughts on the whole like apex and like forcing people off the track and whatnot. So the brake check incident. What are your thoughts on that?
I don't think Max brake checked him. I think what happened was, again, like unless you're listening to like 6 of the live feeds at once, I don't think you really can make a decision about who was told what information at what time.
Yeah, that was the biggest problem.
Yeah, it was like
when the FIN stewards were telling them, we don't know when and how they told them any information, right?
I feel like the information should have been, and we talked about this like on our own, not in the podcast, like there should be a button where it's like, this is going to Max and this is going to Hamilton, or this is going to Red Bull and this is going to Mercedes at the same time.
Yeah.
Because what I think happened is, and I'll get to that later, but what I think happened is Horner, it's beautiful cinematography, the way that they air certain things to show a certain way. We get these messages from the drivers and messages from the team VPs and stuff like very late. Sometimes they're not always in real time. But Horner had said to Verstappen, you need to give the place back and do it strategically.
Which is nothing wrong with that.
Nothing wrong with that.
And I think we all know. Do you know what he meant by that?
He meant like literally give it. What did he mean by that?
So what happened really was like he told them, like Verstappen was told he needed to give the place back, and Horner got on the radio and he's like, you have to give the place back, but do it strategically. And I don't know when to this point Hamilton was told that he was going to get the place taken back. My interpretation of this is slightly different though. So I guess first off, what Christian Horner meant when he said give it back strategically is he meant that Verstappen should give him the place back before the next DRS zone. So the advantage obviously there is if you give the place back, then you can get DRS on the guy and pass him after. So that's what he meant by that. So I think this whole, like my interpretation of what actually happened in that whole brake check like scenario is, first of all, you have to understand that Hamilton is a seasoned driver. He's like considered the greatest Formula One driver of all time. This guy knows strategy. Like strategy is a huge part of his driving, obviously. He's the greatest, right? We can all agree to that Hamilton knows strategy. I think what happened is Hamilton was obviously aware that he felt that this place may need to be given back to him, right? I think we can all agree with that. I think Hamilton and Verstappen were thinking the exact same thing. I think Hamilton
want to take it before the DRS, and he didn't want to give it after the DRS.
DRS, yes. Mm-hmm. So I think, because you can clearly see, we've seen all the replays, and you can look at even some of the data said that like Verstappen like braked pretty hard, but even well before that, he was slowing down and like giving him room to pass. Mm-hmm. So in that sense, like I'm not defending Verstappen, but he did what he was told to do, right? Whether from Lewis Hamilton's perspective, he said he had no idea what was going on, which again is a problem with the FIA. Like if they're going to tell drivers why are they receiving the messages at different times? And I get it. They need the race engineers to like relay that information to them because, you know, you don't want to affect their race or have some announcement blaring in their ears for no reason. But I think that's something that definitely needs to be fixed. But so I think there is that where Hamilton had no idea what was going on. And I also think that they didn't tell him correctly. And I think he was strategically not trying to pass Verstappen on the track. Because if you think about it, it's like you don't see yellow flags. If the guy's slowing down, like why it's a race, like why wouldn't you pass him? For all he knew, he could have, and you could play this card. He could have thought like, oh, he's having engine problems, and he's starting to slow down. You know, they lose power all the time.
True.
Like that's something that could have happened. So it just doesn't add up to me as to why he didn't just go around him. He was like on his ass waiting for him, and I think it's because he wanted to get DRS on him.
I think that all of those things are correct, except I don't think it had anything to do with like, I think the taking it a step further, is like, I think Hamilton didn't expect Max to have a good strategy as well, because you never expect, I mean, like you expect, like I feel he's the best of the best, right? He doesn't expect people to be sitting here thinking like, oh, how am I gonna like make it through this, giving the position back, whatever, in a strategic way. Like, and then second of all, it's split seconds. Like these cars are going so fast. These are split second decisions. Of course, he's going to be confused if he hasn't gotten the message from his race engineer, hasn't gotten the message from the stewards that like, hey, you have to be given the place back. And I feel like there needed to be a contingency on, you need to give the place back in X amount of turns, in X amount of time, or in X amount of laps.
Yeah.
And obviously I'm not saying it needed to take more than one lap, but like if Max had been given like a longer amount of time to give the place back, he might have gone through that DRS zone, given them enough time to convey the message to Mercedes as well. And maybe Hamilton would have figured out that like Max isn't just going to roll over and play dead and just give me like, you know, like first place. And so then the second thing on top of that is like I read a lot about and I heard a lot about like, well, you know, did Max brake check him because all of a sudden after he gets hit from the back, so Verstappen got hit from the back by Hamilton, that he sped up. And there's two theories on this. One, it's a knee-jerk reaction, right? You're just like, what the heck happened?
Yeah.
This guy just hit me. All right, I'm not going to try to give the place back at this point. I got a race to do, and I've got, you know, injury to my car.
Yeah.
Or two, his plan was to get past and then hit the DRS zone, accelerate through the DRS zone to get DRS on Hamilton so that he could then take the position back in a strategic manner. Regardless of which two you think it was, whether it was Max getting startled or trying to be strategic, I don't understand the mentality of why would another driver, who both drivers are at the head of the championship, why would you risk, especially the second to last race, why would either of them risk getting damage to their car just moments before the race is going to conclude, or laps before the race is going to conclude? Like, logically, that makes absolutely no sense. Like, why would Max throw away everything for that? I got a lot of like, you know, messages like, oh, Max is aggressive driver, dangerous driver, this, and he's, you know, reckless. But like, the guy wanted to win the championship. I'm wondering why people think that he's so conniving and aggressive, but that he's stupid enough where he would cause injury to his car that would likely result in him coming into the pits and needing some sort of like assistance. Like, it doesn't make any sense to me. So I feel like I think this again was less of driver error and more of communication error, and having a direct one-to-one between the teams and Massey made the situation a hell of a lot worse.
I think the biggest, like with all that said, the biggest thing that always sticks into my head is like, he was slowing down. Why didn't you just pass him?
Because he wanted to gain a lasting advantage.
That's the thing. It's like, you can't just say, like, the whole brake check argument is there, but before, and yeah, Max did like put the brakes on him, but like well before that, he had slowed way down. Like, I wonder, like, a part of me is like, why didn't Lewis just pass him? I don't
And I
understand
think
why
it's
he
because
didn't just pass him
I
because like I said before, his engine could have been failing. Like guys slow down and like pull over on the track all the time. Although he didn't pull over, he was slowing down quite a bit. That's the thing that always like it's like, dude, he was slowing down. You should have just passed him. I just don't. The only logical reason I can think as why he didn't is because he was trying to do the same thing that Max Verstappen was trying to
Yeah,
do to
that's what
him.
I think it was. I think it was that he wanted to gain the advantage more strategically for Mercedes, and that's fine.
Yeah.
But and I don't know when he got the message either. Maybe he was sitting there going like, "What the heck is going on?" And I don't know. These are like the thing is we can dissect 5 seconds worth of a race, but these
Yeah.
guys are in it split second. So I'm just kind of like, I understand why he was confused because later on in a press conference, he was like, I don't even know when Max got the message, but like I got the message at this, at this time. And like, it's like, I can't fault any of the race engineers if they didn't get the message at the same time and they weren't able to convey it quickly to. It was so fast that the commentators didn't even know. It didn't even come up on the screen what was supposed to go on. Like,
Yeah.
it's so fast. You know what I mean? And like, that's why I think, again, it goes back to like the first point. Like, there needs to be more rules about like, if there is an incident, like some incidents are like really fast. Like, okay, we have an idea, we have an opinion, we need to, this is a 5-second penalty, 10-second penalty, you got to get them back. But you also need to have these differentiations of like within X amount of turns, X amount of laps or X amount of whatever, so that this doesn't happen. Like drivers need to be given more than a second's notice because they're driving at crazy high speeds and they need to make split decisions with their strategy teams. So again, I chalk this up to a combination of both. Drivers were being strategic, but they also got communication at the wrong times. And for that reason, I feel an incident happened that I don't think I can in good conscience say whose responsibility it was because I don't know who got the information first. But I think it's really stupid to say that it was just like the driver's fault, whether you want to say it's Hamilton's fault or the majority of people want to say it's Max's fault, because nobody knows the timeline.
Yeah. It was way too fast.
So then, of course, you get a 5-second penalty for that, for the incident. So Max gets the 5-second penalty for that. And of course, Lewis takes back, into P1, and we finish the race with, Max and Hamilton. Well,
Lewis Hamilton winning the race and Max Verstappen going second.
Yeah, which is really hard to digest. But if it had just been Saudi Arabia as that, I could say, okay, maybe I'm not so concerned that the stewards and the FIA need to get their shit together. But then we come to Abu Dhabi.
So yeah, and then we head into Abu Dhabi completely tied.
Poor Ocon though.
So that oh yeah, we didn't even. I mean that's just I guess bad luck. But Bottas got Ocon right at the line to get the third spot on the podium. So Abu Dhabi now. Let's just go right into it. So like we get to Abu Dhabi, Hamilton, Verstappen obviously tied for points here. Winner takes all, essentially, I guess. Yeah, well, not really winner, because even if they finish lower, it's whoever's ahead. But you guys get what I mean. And I guess a couple things is, I guess the first thing that started everything off was, the safety car, right?
No.
Was it a safety car?
No, the first thing that started everything off that was just setting the tone for how Abu Dhabi was going to be was that lunge where Max then stayed in between the lines and Lewis ran wide and got the lasting advantage. That actually started
was that Abu Dhabi?
That was Abu Dhabi.
Yeah.
So that's the kind of comparison that I was making with Saudi Arabia, is that just from the get-go, and it's like a lasting joke.
And Verstappen was like, he has to give that back. And they were like, nope.
So, which is like shocking to me, and it was no investigation necessary. And I know I say a lot of times, like, oh, the commentators say this. These commentators have been here for like years and years and years and years and years. They've seen the rules develop. They've seen everything. Literally, they were like, I think Crafty was like, I don't see how that's not a investigation or something where at least Lewis needs to give the place back.
Yeah.
But that's on the stewards. And it's like, it was just so frustrating to see that, because to start the race off, I knew that it was going to take a miracle for Max to win. And by a miracle, I don't mean like anything stupid. I meant like safety cars, strategy, and luck. Like, that's what it was going to take, a combination of all those things, because straight off the line, Lewis was faster. They had the more powerful engine, and like throughout the beginning of the race, and even towards like the end of the race, the Mercedes were stronger. I think we can all agree that, right?
I don't think the Mercedes were necessarily faster.
I disagree with you.
I mean, Red Bull had because Red Bull had just as fast of a car. And that's shown like with how the entire season played out. Like, if you ignore the entirety of the season up to the last two races, they were pretty evenly matched.
No, it's not. But they were performing stronger in starts, and Lewis was ahead. Lewis was ahead. It was as simple as that. Like, it's not that like, yeah. I mean, Lewis was ahead. You have to say they're stronger.
I mean, if he gets better starts, that doesn't mean a faster car.
Okay, no, I said Mercedes was stronger because they had the three.
What does that mean?
So their tires were holding up better. They were faster in the starts. Like, they were able to get further. So like, they were able to be 3 to 5 seconds ahead. So it doesn't really matter who's he was like at one point after he gained the advantage, he was like 3 to 4 seconds ahead.
Yeah.
I remember the race day, and I was like, yep, this is done. Like, we're just done, because there's no way he can catch him. He can throw it took.
I think in that particular race he was, but I think overall, no.
That's what I'm saying.
Because Max won
More races.
So
no, I said in this particular race.
Yeah.
Like,
in this particular race, yeah, but I don't think overall they were faster. Maybe, yeah, like, but I mean, that's all, depending on like how all these regulations and rules and everything were applied to, right? Like, yeah, it was.
All right. That doesn't really matter. I mean, he was ahead. Lewis was ahead. Was he not?
What do you mean?
He was ahead in the race.
Which one?
In the last race. He was ahead before all of like the safety cars and all of the crashes and stuff.
He was, he was winning that race. Yeah.
So, okay, doesn't matter who was stronger, who was faster, who has whatever engine, but like Lewis was ahead.
Yeah.
And that was just a fact. And so it was going to take, because of the way that the race had been set up.
Coming to the end of it, it was going to take a miracle. Is that what you mean?
Yeah. It was going to take a miracle. He was 5-6 seconds behind. I remember looking at it and being, I remember I can't remember what lap it was, but I remember looking at you and being like, yep, this is over.
Yeah, we both knew it was like pretty much over.
And everyone thought it was over. That's not just us, because there's only so many seconds you can make up without rain delays, without crashes, without tire strategy can only take you so far. If Lewis gained a lasting advantage, and then on top of it, the car was performing even better or whatever, regardless, Lewis was ahead.
Yeah.
So, one of my favorite of all time laps is lap like 20 to 28 in the last race, where Checo Perez just absolutely murders it. Like, absolutely murders it. So they left
Sergio
out when they brought Max into pit, when they brought Lewis into pit, which is great tire strategy, right? Because you're leaving out your team player. And when you have a team player like Checo, I think nobody can talk about this championship without talking about just Checo overall, but just in this last race specifically. Like, he didn't just race Lewis Hamilton, he gave him a run for his money. Like, I would say that Max winning the championship with the last race.
Checo was instrumental in it.
He was instrumental.
Yeah, he wouldn't have won that without Sergio Perez doing what he did. And, but I mean, we've seen Checo battle people like that. Like, and the thing I love about Checo is like, he's the humblest, like most down to earth guy you've ever seen. Like nicest guy, super humble, super friendly and everything, but he races with such aggression and he does not fear any driver on the grid. Like that is so apparent. Like especially when you have Lewis Hamilton, he's like, "Yeah, I'm gonna race you, bro. Like,
Yeah.
let's go, let's do it." And he showed like, oh man, he was just like, I mean, Verstappen said it. He's like, he's a legend, and he honestly, truly is.
I kind of feel like I'm fangirling this moment, but it was so amazing to see. He never backed down. He got overtaken. He DRS'd on Hamilton, tried to overtake. He was on lesser tires because he hadn't gotten a chance to pit yet, and he raced him, I think, at such a level that made me excited again to watch F1. This is, and we will get to it in our next podcast, but in 2022, you've already seen that, Leclerc and Verstappen went at it and they were racing really amazingly, and that's what Formula One should be.
I mean, I think Checo really showed why he's a Red Bull driver.
Oh, yeah. And why he deserves his seat, and why he deserves to, first and foremost, it was a time where he wasn't going to be in F1.
But he matches that team so well. I was having a chat with one of my buddies about this, that like the reason like Checo matches that energy, like that aggressive energy. Checo matches that, and I think that's why he works so well with Red Bull and Verstappen and that whole team, because that's how they roll, like elbows out racing.
I would say, yeah, get your elbows out. I would say that the word aggressive has been used really negatively in Formula One in the last couple of races.
Yeah.
And I don't think that it is. Aggressively can be passionately, whatever spin you want to put on it. But I really think, I mean, he raced within rules. Like, there were no flags that were raised for him. There were no penalties that were given to him. There was no question of the stewards getting involved at that point. He did clean racing. I mean, I know Lewis wasn't a fan and thought it was dangerous.
Lewis accused him of dangerous driving.
Which I think is really just terrible.
Which is his opinion.
It is.
That's fair.
And my opinion, which is also fair, is that, like, he was racing. And that's how he kept his seat in Formula One. That's how he got to Red Bull. And I think if I were to use a different word to describe aggression in Red Bull, is they are just incredibly determined.
Yeah.
Because whatever they have lacked in the last 3 seasons, they have made up with like passion in their drivers, which is why Albon didn't fit the mold for Red Bull.
He didn't have like that killer instinct.
No.
That's really what it is, and that's what they look for. And if you're in a team that doesn't have like the best car on the grid, that's what you need to win races.
Yeah.
You need to squeeze guys. You need to put the pressure on them a little bit. You got to take, pretty much every advantage that you can. And I really think like Red Bull pushes that limit as far as they can to get the wins, and like they're playing, as far as I'm concerned, they're playing within the rules.
And I think that if the rules were more easily, because like I don't even think that Bottas plays like that. Like the whole juxtaposition of the team player that was brought up between like Verstappen and Perez and Bottas and Hamilton, like Bottas was not the greatest of team players in 2021 because he just was not up in the grid. He was not high up enough to be as supportive of a team member as Perez. And there were situations where Perez was unable to do it for Verstappen. But like again, it's the characteristics of certain drivers that fit their teams, and when they fit their teams, like Norris fits the characteristics of his team very well.
Yeah.
Daniel Ricciardo, who is completely different of a driver than Norris, that's why he's probably struggling, because I think personally, and this is like going off on a bit of a tangent, but I think that Daniel Ricciardo was a better Red Bull driver because he actually had those killer instincts and he had a good car, and I think he should have stayed where he was, because then he tried to remake himself in a different character setting in a different car with Renault and now with McLaren, and I feel like that's why he's struggling.
In Formula One, Danny tries to be so much of like the nice, fun guy. Mm-hmm. I think he would be amazing as just like the villain.
Yeah.
As just like a killer, like a Max Verstappen.
Yeah.
I think he would be like, and I feel like he kind of like was able to do that a little bit when he was in Red Bull. Like he was able to tap into that kind of like, all or nothing like mentality where it's just like you leave everything out on the track. And yeah, I mean, I think he's struggling a little bit to find a team that matches that personality for him. And I think that's kind of why he's struggling a bit, to be honest.
So, I mean, like, all of that being said, Perez killed it. I mean, he ran his car into the ground basically during those laps, and of course, didn't even get to finish the race. That's like the last part I'll mention about Checo, because you told me, I couldn't remember exactly what it was, but they thought that there was going to be a problem with his car, or it wouldn't meet criteria or something. There was a reason he had to retire the car a couple of laps before the end of the race, which was heartbreaking, right?
I mean, at the end of the day, it's like if you're not looking to, yeah.
He was in the points, though.
Yeah.
And so I don't know if that would have changed things with the championship. I can't recall. But regardless, you know, he was cheering Max on the podium. And I know Horner and Verstappen throughout multiple different times recognized like he was pivotal.
Yeah.
Because of those laps that took place. You know, the lap 20-ish laps.
So all that happens, and who was it? Latifi? Was it Latifi that crashes?
Yeah. Poor guy.
Latifi crashes into the wall. We get a safety car.
Like 5 laps before the end of the race.
Yeah. And probably the most controversial, like, few minutes in motorsport. I think ever, probably.
But you know why it was so controversial?
Definitely in Formula One.
In Formula One, definitely, but it was compounded because it was the last race, and
yeah,
it was so close.
I mean, with everything that happened, and it's like, what happened there was, I mean, there's a lot of takes on it. There's a lot of people were very high emotion, and I kind of feel good that we didn't do like this podcast right after, because so many people were high in emotion, which I'll get into a little bit later too. But safety car came out. They need to get Latifi off the track because he put his car into the wall. And then so what happened was there were lapped cars between Verstappen and Hamilton, 5 of them. 6 or 5?
6.
There were a bunch of cars. I don't know if it was 5 or 6. The reason why I'm getting that mixed up is because there were some cars that were between them and some cars that weren't. And there was it was either 5 or 6 behind them or in front of them or whatever. I can't remember. But what the rule is that all of the lapped cars should be able to pass. And then there's 1 lap with the safety car before it comes in. So with that happening, all of the cars would have been able to lap and get themselves out of the way. And then the entire race would have ended under a safety car.
Wasn't the rule that lapped cars must unlap? It was like very specific.
Yeah, lapped cars.
Like
it's all.
Or
well, what are you talking about? What
rule,
actually happened and what the rules are totally different.
Right, but
to a certain extent.
The rule says lapped cars, but what happened is it didn't say all lapped cars.
No, they gave specific cars, and that's part of what obviously the controversy was, because typically when a safety car happens, almost every time, all cars unlap themselves.
But the rule itself says lapped cars, and that's why there was a controversy because it said
no. The rule says any lapped cars.
Okay.
I think that's one thing they changed to all lapped cars.
Okay.
So the reason why this is so like weird and why it's like and why it was even allowed to happen is because apparently the race director has power to say how many and which cars can unlap themselves.
I didn't know that.
That's straight up. That's why he was able to do it.
No, I meant like I didn't know that before the race.
And I don't think a lot of people did. And he has the authority to pull in the safety car at whatever time he wants. So this is the issue. I was like bringing up with some people I was talking to, is that why is it that they have rules in place when you have other rules made to circumvent them? Because then it's technically not breaking the rules. If you're using one rule to break another, you're still technically following rules. They built in the ability to break rules into the rules. You know what I mean?
That's strategy. You got to find the loopholes.
For whom?
For the person who does it.
Well, I don't know strategically what he was trying to gain.
Well, I mean, that's the other controversy.
Yeah, that's the other.
Michael Massey looked like he was rooting for one side, and then
But the I mean, we can. The thing is, we got to take this one at a time because there's so much to unpack there. So the number one problem is like with the FIA, they have these rules in place, but then they also have rules that allow you to break the rules. And I think with these new regulations, they kind of they're trying to eliminate a lot of that. So when people were telling me like, oh, he got robbed and it wasn't fair and this and that and da da da, we all know what happened. The cars lapped. They let Verstappen like chase him down like it's like a lion, and there's like a little.
Well, you missed something.
What do you call it? What do you call those little
Cubs?
things? No, you know where there's like
Antelopes?
a lion and there's a little antelope, little Lewis Hamilton antelope, like prancing out
like
there.
Ripped his ass off.
And you let the lion just like rip him apart, like in the middle of his old like just in front of his
whole tribe.
Yeah, a little
like
antelope
his,
just trying to run away. Little baby antelope.
Oh my God, that's
big
so
lion
sad.
just comes in like.
I'm like holding our little
So
puppy.
literally, that's literally how I.
Well, you missed one thing, Cam. Before we get there, you missed the fact that while all this was going on, Red Bull made the strategic decision
to pit Max.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that's what obviously caused more cars to be in front of Max to Lewis. And I think that's a really important fact to bring up.
Crashed and they brought him in.
And they brought him in right away. So that was strategy. That was not any robbing. That was not Red Bull gaining an advantage that they didn't deserve, or Mercedes being screwed by anyone but themselves. If they decided to bring in Lewis, this whole situation could have potentially been very, very different if you're thinking about it.
This is the equivalent to being at the blackjack table and they see a king show up and they're like, I'm just going to go all in on this before the other card gets turned.
And what we said, I'll never forget this, is during that race where you said there was nothing to lose. I remember watching it and we're like, he's got nothing to lose. And so what happens between Max pitting under the safety car is 5 or 6, whatever, cars between him and Lewis, and the initial, so Lewis stays out, the initial communication was lapped cars will not be able to unlap. Horner was on the messaging whatever system with Massey, and Toto was on the messaging system with Massey, and basically the first ruling, again, these split-second decisions that need to be made, which are under higher intensity because of the complexity at hand, is the stewards had ruled, or Massey had ruled, that there is no reason for the lap cars to unlap themselves. Then, very quickly, Horner, I think, gets on the phone again with Massey, which I don't think the team principals should literally be able to like press a button and be like, hey, Michael Massey, like,
no.
I don't think anybody should be able to do that, because if I were Michael Massey, I need like my clear mind and to think, how the heck do I get this race restarted?
I don't know how that's even an allowed thing. That's ridiculous. Because even like people, I mean, a lot of people like complain about, Christian, but Toto Wolff got on there and told him not to deploy a safety car at one point.
At all. To put a safety car out when there was a crash.
What?
Or an incident, which caused debris on the track. Like,
given he did make a statement later saying like, yeah, I probably shouldn't have done that.
It's a heat of a moment.
And both of them were saying that there needs to be less direct communication with the race director, which is something they changed for this season, which is very welcome.
Thank God, because I don't think that the race director can be looking at his emails during the race.
Michael, I sent you an email.
Did you have a chance to see it?
Yeah, bro. I don't check my
emails during the race. So, like, Horner gets on the phone with Massey, and Massey very bluntly says, I'm more interested in getting this race underway. Like, give me a second.
Yeah.
And, like, those are valuable. And my heart kind of feels for Michael Massey, because did he allow for this power button to be placed where, team principals can talk directly to him? I doubt it, because it sounds like a very stressful job.
Yeah.
And so I feel bad for the guy. I do. I feel bad for the guy.
Yeah.
So, and he's wasting valuable time and listening to a bunch of people yelling at him, where he is just trying to get this race underway.
Imagine that pressure.
Oh, I would poop myself.
Like, these cars are just going around the track and you're like, what do I do?
It's awful. Because just if you're thinking about the split decisions that need to be made, he has to make split decisions too.
But he's also thinking like, this is like an incredibly intense season of Formula One. Do I really want it to end under a safety car?
No, because of course Michael Massey has to report to like ad PR people too, and they'd be like, well, what WTF? Like,
why didn't you pull it in,
yeah,
bro?
why didn't you pull it in? You have the power to pull it in. And did you not know you had the power to pull it in? So I think a lot of people vilified Michael Massey as well, which I agree that he was the human error that made a lot of bad decisions, but he was put in an impossible situation multiple times. Like, my heart goes out to the guy. I really hope he's still vacationing in like the Bahamas or something, because he deserves some time off. So first Horner gets on the phone with him, and he says, and Massey says, I just want to finish the race. I'm literally just trying to get this incident cleared up. Like, give me a second. I don't even know, and I've listened back probably 12 or 15 times. I don't even know who and what told anybody that the 5 or 6 cars between Lewis and Hamilton.
Control.
It was race control. We saw it at the top, and I remember
race
seeing
control
Norris.
is controlled by Michael Massey, though.
Okay.
The race director.
So all I saw at the top of the screen was like Norris and then like a bunch of other people.
It says it on the safety car.
Yeah, no, it does.
There's like I think there's a green light that comes on the safety car, which means the lapped cars can overtake.
And if you listen to some of the radios, the cars that were trying to unlap themselves were confused as hell.
Yeah, they were like, what the hell?
Norris
That's weird.
was like, what, because you're about to lap a safety car, right? Like, you aren't getting the information in time. I was surprised that, hindsight being 2020, that there wasn't a collision. I was so shocked, because if I was a driver who'd driven for X amount of years and I wasn't being allowed to unlap myself, I would be super confused. And if I was allowed to be unlapping myself, I would be confused. So I know you really like this part. So the 5 or 6 cars unlapped themselves. Toto is pooping himself.
No, Michael, no. No, he was like, what did he say to him?
This is so not fair.
No, that was when they were like racing.
That was the wrong call or something like that. I don't know.
He was like, Michael, no. No, Michael. And then so all the cars unlap themselves, sorry. Verstappen's on soft tires, and then they just let him go. Baby antelope Hamilton. That's my just prancing on the savannah.
Cam's like galloping with his fingers.
You know?
Oh, I miss video.
That's Lewis Hamilton right there. And they just unleash Max Verstappen on him, and obviously the rest is history. The guy's on soft tires.
I mean, he gets him
snatches him up.
He gets him hard in the paint and stays within the lines and literally takes the whole thing. And
that was so ridiculous. We were screaming. If you follow us on Instagram and you saw that story, we were yelling at our TV.
Cam told me to shush, and I was not happy with that. I was like, I know we had neighbors at the time in a condo.
It was a lot. I was literally concerned. I was like, I don't want people thinking like there's like violence occurring in here.
Milo was on a different level. I mean, that poor puppy was up at like 6 a.m. and he was like, we didn't even, he was all
so
up in
Verstappen chases him down. Your boy Toto Wolff gets on the radio and he's like, no, Michael, no, this is so not right. It is so not right, Michael. Why do I make Toto sound Jamaican?
I don't know. He's German.
Michael, this is so not right, man. The dude's German.
I don't care if you
get your accents right, Cam.
I don't care if you like Mercedes or if you like Red Bull or if you like, a Haas. But
I love Haas.
I like Haas in 2022.
We'll get into that on the next one.
I can't wait. But no matter what you believe in F1, the memes of Toto Wolff, if you don't find them funny, I'm sorry, but you really need to just laugh.
Of F1,
a little bit. They're
not just
so
Toto
funny.
Wolff, but all of them
even
are
Horner,
funny.
they're hilarious, especially of Gunther. But
Gunther Steiner.
So yeah, Max took it, and then I don't even know. It basically ended with Max winning world champion, and then
weird, crazy
Mercedes winning constructors, which was kind of wild. And
I remember being extremely whatever. We root for Red Bull. It's all good. We love Formula One at the end of the day. That's who we root for. First and foremost is great racing. I I remember being like so ecstatic that like Verstappen won, but also extremely concerned and confused as to what just happened. I was literally like, no lie, like I was happy Verstappen won, but I was really heartbroken for Hamilton.
I was,
The watching
yeah.
him pull in and just sit in his car was so hard to watch.
And you know, this is what I wanted. This is something that I feel really strongly that I wanted to touch upon. Obviously I'm like very human, and the thing is that every time as a fan of Red Bull and of specifically Max, I have felt saddened by like an incident or a penalty or a loss. I felt that Lewis was now experiencing that hardship because of the miscommunication. So I had experienced it as a fan of Verstappen's.
Yeah.
And now I was experiencing it because I knew that had certain communications not been foregone, Hamilton very likely would have won world champion. And it's not that I wanted Max to win no matter what, like at all costs, like to whatever. I'm actually also sad that Max won in such a controversial way because it really did taint it for him, although he doesn't seem to let on about that.
It does, but I don't think a lot of people do, to be honest.
I have gotten messages from people who are like, oh, like a lot of messages were like, oh, there's always gonna be like an asterisk or something like next to Max's win, and I'm like, I think less than that. There's always gonna be a part of me that was like, Lewis really didn't. I mean, he didn't have the whole story, and at that point, he really was just like a little antelope creature, like waiting to get messed up. Like I'll always look at him like Bambi now, you know. It was just like he was waiting to get screwed.
Yeah.
And to see like his father there, I think that made it really human for me. That was really hard because I think everyone was at a loss for words because it took so much time to digest that race. Like I watched it personally full twice.
Yeah.
I literally couldn't understand the race in its entirety the first time I watched it.
The biggest issue I see there is like, if you think about it, Verstappen and Red Bull didn't do anything wrong. They didn't do anything they weren't allowed to do. They were given allowances to do. I mean, I think if anything, Red Bull just rolled the dice and swapped the tires, and like they just erred on the side of luck. Mm-hmm. So.
And they got lucky.
And it paid off. So, yeah.
They didn't do anything wrong.
With all that said, I mean, that's kind of how the entire thing ended. I'm sure we'll talk about it more in the future, maybe. Mm-hmm. We'll see if it comes up in another podcast. But, like, all I want to say is, like, after all this happened, and I'm glad we took some time off to, like, talk about this because, I mean, I just happened to watch Formula One, and I have a lot of friends who are, quite honestly, Mercedes and Lewis Hamilton fans. And at the end of the day, regardless of like who you root for, and I feel the same, like I've always felt this way, is like I'm a fan of good racing and Formula One. Yeah, like I got Red Bull merch and stuff, and I wear Red Bull because I like, I like the team and I like the livery and everything. It's like cool. It's like I just happen to, like Max Verstappen. But at the end of the day, I like Formula One and I like, racing at the end of the day. And I had a lot of friends who were quite honestly like kind of overly emotional about this whole situation. And like this happens a lot in just sport in general. But like I don't take it personally. I hope nobody else takes this personally. Like this podcast isn't here to like, we joke around and we make fun of people and call like, Christian a handsome bastard and, like Hamilton a little antelope and everything. It's all jokes at the end of the day. We're just here having a good time. We love watching racing.
I love talking about racing.
We love talking about it. So it's like, there's no hard feelings. And I'm hoping that like people who are watching, who are Hamilton fans, Verstappen fans, like I hope you guys don't feel any kind of way. And I hope we all kind of feel the same way in terms of we just want like, you know, the best racing and the best rules that are clear and concise for everybody.
Good job. That was very nice.
God damn.
No, but I think that, I mean, like for everybody listening as well, like I really enjoyed, I think that, and that was like, I think that was actually a big reason I took a big step back after the end of last year is it was really hard to like sift through some messages, which were just like, I mean, I love Max. Like, I think Max is freaking amazing, and I really respect him as a driver, and I really respect like Red Bull.
Yeah.
But I also really respect Mercedes, and it's, I felt like you were either put in like an A or a B or a black or a white. When like I can have mad respect for Red Bull, but also like be devastated for Lewis Hamilton that he like missed out.
Two things can be right at the same time.
And I feel like I think a lot of people are like, well, you have to choose. Well, I don't have to choose.
Yeah.
I'm not going to choose. I can be devastated and also elated for somebody at the same time. I'm a very complex human being like that. That's what women are.
Yeah. And we need to normalize that.
And we need to normalize it. And that's why I can't wait for our podcast that's going to come up for the 2022, because you can already see, especially if you've watched the first race, that like I'm really excited for good racing. And it's okay if like Max doesn't win. Like I'm really excited for the new rules and guidelines.
How everything is starting to shape up is like really
lit.
exciting, and I'm really excited to talk about it.
So if anybody does message, I know me specifically, or if message Cam, like just know I enjoy like talking so much about F1, and I hope that more people will be messaging me and us after this podcast to talk about it a little bit more.
So we appreciate you guys listening. Again, we're probably going to go fully audio from here on out, just so we can stay on top of it and honestly I think getting the podcast out is more important than getting the video out. We'll see in the future if we end up throwing video back in, but it looks like we're going to stick to audio for the foreseeable future. So thank you guys for listening. Make sure you subscribe. Follow us on Instagram. Make sure you subscribe to us on Spotify,
YouTube.
And YouTube. You can check out some of the YouTube content. And I think that's it.
Yeah, we'll see you or we'll talk with you for the first race for 2022 very soon.
Bahrain.
Peace.
Bye.
Bye.